Yes, everybody, Russ and the West Ham Network. Hope you're safe and well. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Now we're in a situation now where we're going to have one, it's football all the way now every week, thankfully, until the end of the season. So no international breaks, so we can get this season out of the way. Anton did a piece today about giving Graham time, and that was interesting to see Anton's view of that. Obviously, we've had the fallout of the game on Saturday, and I've been saying to him, blue in the face. Füllkrug, a Füllkrug type player makes this side. He really does. But we're going into a period of it's going to be a lot of change in the summer. A lot of change, a lot of players going. One report says up to 10 players could be leaving West Ham. I don't think it'll be as many as 10. But there'll be a significant shift, players in and players out. And obviously, we don't have a Tim Steidten type character. We've got, obviously, Potter, we've got Carl McCauley, who I bumped into with his family on Saturday, walking away from the game. Lovely to see that the little one was in a West Ham kit. Little baby. Yeah, nice. Yeah, I like that. I like stuff like that. Shows that you're sort of in for not the long haul, but it shows that you're, if you put your kid in a kit, you sort of, it's a bit like Harry Potter. You've marked them, haven't you, really? And there was assumptions that we'll be bringing in someone who could be involved with the negotiations, a footballing operations director. It was long believed that Dan Ashworth could be it, but according to reports, the club have decided against that, having, they said, they had their fingers burnt with two sort of director of footballs in that. Well, actually, to be honest, it's three, but they never said about the third one. In that, Tim Steidten, they think it was a mistake. Retrospectively, I think time will tell on that. In my opinion, I thought he brought in some good players, albeit, but he's and the thing about Tim is he always gets sort of lampooned. Say, oh yeah, but he didn't find Kudus. That's not his job. He's not chief scout. He is there to get deals over the line. You've got a scouting network. You've got Maximilian Khan. That's the idea of Maximilian Khan is to identify players for Tim to then try and buy. Same as Carl McCauley and Max, both of them together are trying to find identify players to then go and buy. No, Tim wasn't the guy. I found Kudus. No, he didn't. But you got the deal done. And I think I genuinely think there's a slight issue there. We need someone in that role. Yes, because it takes a different type of person, I think. And there's a Dan Ashworth and also Mario Huselos as well, under Pellegrini, both times a director of football. People forget about Gianluca Nani and all the stuff with Savio as well. So it's not. So we've had a history of director of footballs, maybe not panning out as we want. So in a move which, to be honest, reminds me of The Office, the American Office, when Dwight makes himself assistant to the the manager, wherever it is. We've decided. Well, it's believed, according to reports, that David Sullivan will be our director of football. Kinda. I say kinda. He won't necessarily have that title, but it's believed, according to reports, that that obviously Ashworth's not going to be approached. I think that was Sean said that, and in fact, due to those failures, the report states that Sullivan himself is going to be taking on the role, assistant to the assistant, director of football to the board director. So that means he'll be working, if this is to be believed, closely with Potter and McCauley, rather than pushing the responsibilities onto a third party, so to speak, a director of football. There's no doubt in my eyes that we need some serious backing this summer. There's no doubt as well that Potter would know when he took the job that the likelihood is Tim wouldn't be with him, alongside him. as I've said before, for me, we know that Sullivan never pays compensation really to bring people in. All managers we brought in, under him tended to be out of contract, have been out of contract, out of work. But to pay over £1 million to bring in Carl McCauley shows some willingness to bring in people who are experts. And I think that was probably part of the negotiations with Potter, in that he wanted Carl McCauley to work alongside him. And with the assumption that, you won't necessarily have a director of football over top of me. They'll report directly to Sullivan. Now, it's an old school way of doing things. It seems to have come back full circle. Obviously, David Moyes was very much in charge, and then Tim came in, and then Tim took charge, and then they've gone back to a old school sort of setup. Part of me thinks, in a weird way, that West Ham are never set up to be modern. As I've said, I think our best times have been under British-based managers. I don't think we've been particularly suited to foreign-based managers on the majority side. And it may be that West Ham aren't suited to this sort of more continental style of hierarchy in terms of director of footballs. It does put more power back in Potter's hands in the real state, whereas under obviously a director of football, there's the opportunity of getting rid of, and we've seen it particularly in the Bundesliga and stuff like that. Head coaches go and get brought in, not willy nilly, but with less fanfare. Where here you lose a manager and it's like, oh my god, that the whole world crumbles. So we'll have to wait and see. I mean, obviously, under the previous regime, if the relationship between the board and the director of football was slightly strained, it's bad news for the manager in terms of bringing in the players they want, because then it's like down the chain. Whereas there is more direct contact between, but it's not necessarily. But it's the larger shareholder. It's not necessarily, to all intents and purposes, football is a business, and that's the issue for me. Is you now got someone who's not necessarily looking, in charge, so to speak, of transfers, who isn't, who has a vested interest to make money for the club, for himself, really, same as all the shareholders. So that's an issue for me. But there's no doubt this transfer window coming up is going to be crucial for West Ham. It's oh, I'm going to say it could be, it's not career defining, but it's season defining. How well we do at the transfer window, because we need to hit the ground running. We need bodies. We need people who are going to play to the strengths of what possible is, and we haven't really seen loads of it. But we clearly see, if you have a strong striker, a strong forward up front, a big lad, a guy who can link up plays, got a bit about him, then you make the sides tick. And with the people such as Kudus potentially going, obviously reports which have been sort of rubbished about Bowen to Liverpool, Paqueta. There's a lot of people who are probably going to give. I wouldn't be surprised someone like Bowen would probably give, next season up until Christmas and see how things are going, because obviously he's seen a lot of change in the last sort of 18 months. You saw the decline of Moyes, you saw Lopetegui come in. It's been three managers really in the space of 10 months or so. So, I think with a pre-season, I think, bring back maybe the likes of Aged, the likes of Potts, and, we've talked about that quite a lot in terms of players sort of due back and from loan spells and what we do with them, and, a number of players out of contract as well. It's going to be busy. It's going to be a busy summer without a shadow of a doubt. And with our new director of football, I'm just anxious of what we'll see. I'm worried of what we can do. And I did like the idea of having a footballing operations person, because there's his interest is to improve. Number one is to improve. There's no doubt that there's an interest for Sullivan to make sure the side do well, because obviously that then generates revenue. But there's going to be a decision also. There'll be a. That's what slightly worries me a bit. But to be fair, if we look back at it, under David Moyes, our most successful period in modern day history, so to speak, that was under the stewardship of David Sullivan, really involved in the footballing operations. So, look, we'll see what happens, but it's a risk, whatever you do, isn't it? And as we said, we had Steve Lomas on the channel last week, and he was like, every transfer is a risk, and every decision in football is a risk, and hindsight will tell you if it was a good idea or not. Anyway, we'll be back a bit later on. Hammers Headlines and the Academy show as well. All that good stuff. Until next time, everyone, take care, stay safe, stay warm, stay humble, keep the faith, and come on, you bloody irons. Just come on.